Hello everyone, my name is Keely. Welcome to my channel. Welcome back if you've been here before. Today I'm going to do the 2022 reading survey. I've seen a couple of other booktubers do this video, so I just took questions from their videos and I wrote them down in my phone, so I have it in my notes app. I'm going to go through all the questions with you. I believe there are 22 questions, which matches up really well with 2022, so let's go ahead and get started. So question number one is, how many books did you read this year and did you complete your goal? So I read 152 books this year and I definitely completed my goal. I completed my goal several times because my yearly reading goal was 52 books and I read 100 more books than that, and every time I beat my goal I would change it to a new goal, and so I had to change it like 3 or 4 times. 152 books is the most books I have ever read in one year in my lifetime, so it was definitely the best reading year quantity-wise, not so much quality. But for pages read, I read 52,049 pages, so also the most pages read, which makes sense because it is the most books I've read by far. So yes, I definitely completed my goal several times over. Question number two is most read genre, which according to Storygraph is fantasy. Which, if you have watched my videos this year, is kind of funny because I am a self-proclaimed non-fantasy girl, but I have enjoyed a lot of young adult fantasy this year, and I've re-fallen in love with that genre and realized that young adult fantasy is a lot better for me than adult fantasy, and so that kind of makes sense. But then we also have romance and horror that are up there as well, and horror is my favorite genre, horror and thrillers, so I'm hoping that'll be my most read genre for 2023, but as of right now, it's fantasy, which I just don't get. Question number three is longest and shortest book you read this year. So as far as shortest book goes, the shortest book I read was The Little Prince, which was 96 pages. That's what Goodreads says, but I think it depends on what edition you read. But yes, shortest book was The Little Prince, but my longest book was The Stand by Stephen King, which is 1,152 pages. Now, to be fair, I didn't start this in 2022. It took me like over a year to read it. I don't know exactly, like a year and 3 months to read it because I took my sweet time with it. But this was definitely the longest book that I read in 2022. Question number four is your favorite release of 2022. So this one, a lot of my favorite books were actually released in 2021, which was interesting to find out. So my favorite released in 2022 was How to Survive Your Murder by Danielle Valentine. So we follow sisters, and one of them is named Alice, and on Halloween night, her and her sister Claire go to a Halloween party, and unfortunately Alice is the only witness to her sister Claire's murder. So a year later, we are at the trial trying to arrest and convict her sister's murderer when Alice hits her head and she wakes up a year earlier and her sister's still alive, so now she has to figure out how she can save her sister and catch a serial killer. So this was incredibly fast-paced. I was on the edge of my seat wanting to know what happened next, and because of the repercussions of the choices that Alice was making, things in the future started changing and more people started dying. The kills were also pretty gruesome for a young adult book, and I just really had a great time with this. Question number five is favorite debut in 2022, and honestly I don't have an answer for this one because I believe most of the books I read were not debuts. So I can't think of anything off of the top of my head, unfortunately, but maybe something will come up. Question number six is favorite book not published this year, and if you watch my best books of the year, you'll know that is The Electric Kingdom by David Arnold. I believe this was published in 2021, and this was my absolute favorite book of the year. So this is actually a post-apocalyptic book, and we follow several characters as they are navigating this world, and in this world, the apocalypse happened because flies took over, and it is called The Fly Flu. So these flies are basically like sharks in the sky. That's what I like to refer to them as, because they are bloodthirsty and super strong and can carry you off if they smell your blood. And they will also eat the flesh off your bones. But the characters we follow are Nico and her dog, and they were sent out in the world by Nico's father trying to find a portal and a better life. Now we also follow a character called Kit, and he grew up in a movie theater with his found family. And then we also follow a mysterious character called the Deliverer, who brings life to several of the other characters we see, but we don't know why or how. So this was actually written so beautifully and I was so interested. It had the perfect amounts of horror and intrigue and suspense, but also it was about finding your way in the world and trying to make a better life for those that you love, and I absolutely loved it. Book number 7 is a book that lived up to the hype, and for this one I'm gonna have to go with No Exit by Taylor Adams. This was one of my favorite books of the year and it was incredibly hyped. It's one of the most hyped thrillers I've ever heard of and it definitely lived up to it. The snowy isolated setting is absolutely perfect, and once again I was on the edge of my seat because there were so many twists and turns and I had no idea what was going to happen next, and I just loved it so much. Number 8, book that felt like an accomplishment, and for me this one's easy because that is The Stand by Stephen King. Once again, this is the longest book I've ever read, the longest book that I own, and I was reading it for so long, so it felt like such a big accomplishment to finally finish it and actually enjoy it. Question number 9 is favorite character. So there were a lot of characters that I really enjoyed this year, but one of the ones that came to mind immediately was Alistair from All of Us Villains by Christine Lynn Herman and Amanda Foody. Now Alistair is one of those very broody, mysterious characters that is just always sad. He reminds me so much of Draco Malfoy, and Alistair would definitely be a Slytherin. He's a morally gray character that you just want to help and root for, and he is just kind of like a little puppy dog that has been kicked too many times and you really just want to help him along. I just love Alistair so much. Question number 10 is least favorite character, and there were a lot that I did not like, but I'm gonna have to go with one that is fresh on my brain because I recently finished this book, and that is Abigail from 'Tis the Season for Revenge. I want to fight Abigail so bad. She's not even like the worst of the worst, but for me, her personality and mine just clash so much. I just want to tussle. I could take her. I know I could. And number 11 is most shocking book or moment. So for this one, I'm going to have to go with Rock, Paper, Scissors by Alice Feeney. I feel like there aren't a lot of times that I'm completely like shocked, but I feel like a thriller is a good shocking book. And this one definitely had a really interesting twist that I hadn't read before. And although I felt like I wasn't completely surprised, it definitely was still shocking to read the reveal, and I just really loved it. Number 12 is favorite couple / OTP, and I'm gonna have to go with Audrey Rose and Thomas Cresswell from Hunting Prince Dracula specifically. So the first book, Stalking Jack the Ripper, I really didn't care about the relationship or Thomas Cresswell, but I knew a lot of people did and I just didn't understand why. And this book really opened my eyes up to Thomas Cresswell, and I really do like Audrey Rose and him together, and I really did fall for Thomas Cresswell after this book. Question number 13 is the best written book you read this year, and that is easily Julia and the Shark by Kieran Millwood Hardgrave. This is also in my top 10 books of the year. Absolutely love this. It is a beautifully written middle grade. It is about grief and loss and mental illness and watching those you love suffer with mental illness. It is heartbreaking and absolutely beautifully written. Question number 14 is book that you pushed the most people to read in 2022, and honestly I don't feel like I pushed anyone to read anything. I don't have a lot of reach in the bookish community. I just read what I want, and I don't think I encouraged anyone or told anyone to pick up a specific book this year, so I don't really have an answer for that one. Question number 15 is favorite book cover of the year, and I'm gonna have to go with The Merciless Ones by Namina Forna. This is book 2 in the Gilded Ones series, and The Gilded Ones was actually probably my favorite book cover of last year, and this one is just stunning as well. Unfortunately, really did not like this book at all, but I love the cover so much. Question number 16 is favorite adaptation, and honestly I don't think I watched a ton of adaptations this year. The only one I can think of that comes to mind is No Exit, and I actually really did enjoy this movie. It was a little different from the book, but it was just as fast-paced and twisty and turny, and it was nice to see that all on screen. Question number 17 is what book made you cry the most, and I have to go with Harry Potter and the Deathly Hallows. Even though I've read this book countless times, I still cry in all the same places, even though I know exactly what's gonna happen, and this reread was no different. I still cried every time. Question number 18 is a book that made you laugh the most, and I don't have an answer for this one because I really don't feel like I laugh in a lot of books. If I do, it's like a one-time thing and then I don't laugh throughout the whole book, but I'm not really a book laugher. Question number 19 is a new favorite author that you discovered this year. And I'm gonna have to go with Seanan McGuire. I read, I think, 7 of her books this year because I read 7 of the Wayward Children series. I have only read that and one of her Myra Grant books. Now, I read the Myra Grant book last year, so technically I discovered Seanan McGuire last year, but that was under a different pen name. So I'm gonna say Seanan McGuire. I have really enjoyed some of her books. Some of them in the Wayward Children series, not so much, but she is such a different author because she writes about so many different things, and it's really interesting what goes on in her brain and how she can put that into a story. So yes, I'm gonna have to say Seanan McGuire is a new favorite author, and I can't wait to read more of her books. Question number 20 is Guilty Pleasure Read of the Year, and I have to go with November 9 by Colleen Hoover. Now, a lot of people don't like this book. They say it's really problematic and just really toxic, and I loved it. I gave this book 5 stars. So we follow Ben and Fallon, and they meet one day on November 9th when they're 18, and they have this whirlwind night of a romance, and so they decide for the next 5 years they're gonna meet up every year on November 9th. And I just love that concept so much, and I love Ben and Fallon. They are probably my favorite Colleen Hoover couple, even though everyone says they're extremely toxic. So this is definitely my guilty pleasure read of the year. Question number 21 is favorite book you reread this year. Now, I actually did get to reread quite a few books this year, but I'm gonna have to go with the Unwind Dystology by Neil Shusterman. This is just the first book, but really the entire series I reread, and I loved it so much. It holds up so well. This is a dystopian series where in this world, once your child turns 13, you can sign them over to the government to have them unwound, which is basically taking them apart piece by piece and donating their body parts to other people. So they say it's not killing them, they're just living in a divided state, even though we all know they will not exist after they are unwound. So we follow several characters. We follow Connor, who found the unwind order from his parents, so he runs away and escapes. We follow Risa, who lives in a state home, and the state home is getting too full, so they decide to have her unwound because they need to make more room. And then we follow Lev, who grew up in a family, a very religious family, and he is the 10th born, so he is the tithe, meaning he was raised to be unwound. These characters are so much fun to read about. The stakes that they go through and everything is just so high intensity. What's the word? I don't know, but I just loved it so much and I had a great time rereading it. And finally, question number 22 is, were you happy with your reading year, and what will you do differently in 2023? So overall, I was really happy with my reading year. I got to a lot of books that I really wanted to, but my average rating was really low for this year, so I want to try to increase that, but I don't know how I can, because I was reading books I was interested in already, and I just ended up not liking them. So I'm hoping next year, or this year now, 2023, my average rating will be higher. I also won't mind if I read less books this year, because I want to focus on reading the bigger books that I was too scared to read last year because I wanted to read more books overall. So I really want to try to read bigger books, even if it means reading less books. So those are all of the questions for the 2022 reading survey. Let me know how many books you read in the year and if you met your goal. But that is it for this video. If you have made it this far, go ahead and leave the pencil emoji. But that is it. Thank you so much for watching. As always, all my social media links will be down below, and I will see you next time. Bye!